How's it going? Welcome to Oxnard Movement. Thanks for watching this video. If you're watching this, it's probably because you scheduled an intro session to sit down and meet with one of our coaches, either myself, Coach Brenda, or Coach Sam, to get to know you a little bit more, get to figure out the direction that you should be going in order to make progress towards your goals. One of the things that I like to share with everybody before they start working with us is just a little bit about what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. This video gives you a great explanation at the bird's eye view of what's going on inside here, so that when you sit down and meet with us, you have a little bit better idea of who we are as an organization. So the first thing that we are going to talk about, we're going to talk about these 4 different boxes here today, but this first thing that we're going to talk about today is defining fitness, because you might be coming in here because you want to be more fit, and I'm here because I want to be more fit, and the other athletes are on the gym floor because they want to be more fit as well. But we all might have different definitions of what it means to be fit. So I want to tell you what ours is, so that when I'm telling you, hey, you're getting more fit, you know what I'm talking about. And to be fit for us is to be competent across 10 general physical skills. Those 10 general physical skills are as follows: cardio, stamina, strength, and flexibility, power, speed, coordination, agility, accuracy, and balance. Those 10 general physical skills. Now, these general physical skills are kind of broken up into 2 different categories. This first bit here, flexibility, strength, stamina, and cardio, are all physiological adaptations. What does that mean? That means they are changes that you can actually see in the body, things that you can measure and change. We typically refer to these as things that we train, or training adaptations. Now there are 4 more: coordination, agility, accuracy, and balance, that are considered neurological adaptations, which means they are learning adaptations. And in our space, we typically refer to these things as things that we practice. And as you can see, there are 2 that don't fit neatly into those 2 categories. They are power and speed. And that's because they're both a combination of training adaptations and practice adaptations. Now, what do I mean by competent in these 10 general physical skills? I mean, if you gave yourself a 1 to 10 score in each of them, you would score in between a 6 and an 8. What I'm not looking for is somebody who scores a 10 in cardio because they can run a 5-minute mile, or they can run a 3-hour marathon, but then they score a 2 in flexibility because they can't touch their toes. What I'm not looking for is somebody who is a 10 in strength, because they can put 400 pounds on a bar and they can squat with it. But they're a 2 in coordination because they can't jump on top of a box. I want to balance across all 10 of these general physical skills, and there is a way that we can do that. Before we talk about that, though, and how we do that, these 2 things are important, and in particular, power output for us. Power is a really good tool for us to use. And that's because in exercise physiology, power is exactly equal to intensity. So if something is more intense, it is more powerful. If something is more powerful, it is more intense. And the equation for power is force times distance divided by time. This is about as much math as you're going to see today. The way that we see this inside the gym, you could take this force as something like your body weight. You could take this distance as something like 1 mile, and this time something like 8 minutes. And we could do some calculations and we could find a power output. Now, I want to change that power output a little bit. And the way that I'm going to change that output is I'm going to add a 20-pound weight vest to your body. You're going to put on a 20-pound weight vest, and I'm going to ask you to run that same 1 mile in that same 8-minute time frame. Now, if we increase the force in this equation and keep the distance and the time the same, our power output also increases. And if our power output increases, so does our intensity. So if our intensity is up, our power output is up. And I'll talk about why we like to see that intensity is going up as we train. The more and more we train, we should be producing more power. And I'll talk about that at the end of the day today. So that's what we see for power output. Speed is a correlative of that as well, both training adaptations and neurological adaptations or practice adaptations. Now let's take a look a little bit on the energy systems inside the body. This will be a basic overview on those energy systems. I'm not going to get too deep into them. I want you to stick with me here. So we have percentage of power output on this side, and we have time on this side here. Our body has three different ways to produce power, or produce energy, I say. There are our phosphocreatine system, our glycolytic system, and our oxidative system. In any given piece of work, you'll be using some combination of all of these energy systems. The stuff on the left of this chart is stuff that is very high power output, very little oxygen. The stuff on the right side of this chart is a much lower percentage of power output, but it is much higher in oxygen usage. Now, the reason I put this together is if we took markers of a bunch of different activities, you could think from things on this side over here being like a 1 rep max lift, like a max height box jump, like a 100-meter run, like a 200-meter row, something very short and fast, moving all the way out to these distances over here like a 5-mile run or a 15-mile bike ride or a 2-mile swim or 500 jump rope, something in that nature that is way out on this time domain here. We can do a correlation of all of these things or make a best fit curve, and it would look something like this. Last piece of math, we could do a little bit of math and figure out the area underneath this curve, and mathematically that area underneath your curve would be your ability to do work, your work capacity. I want to increase your work capacity across broad, time, and modal domains. Blah, 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 blah. I just want you to be able to do more stuff. Long stuff, short stuff, heavy stuff, light stuff, running, swimming, biking. I don't really care, but I want you doing more of it and the ability to do so. So I want to take that line from down there and let's move it all the way up there, and let's add this to your ability to do things. Hey, I've hiked somewhere that I've never hiked before. I've climbed a mountain that I never climbed before. I lifted weights that I've never lifted before. Things of that nature. Add these to your capacity to do things. And how do we do that? Well, typically we break our training up into 3 different time domains, generally speaking. We have stuff that's less than 3 minutes long. We have stuff that's 6 to 15 minutes long. And we have stuff that's 20 minutes or more. In any given 30 days of our training out on the gym floor, you would see about 20 of these days between 6 and 15 minutes long. You would see about 5 of these days less than 3 minutes long. And you would see about 5 of these days 20 minutes or longer. Now, all of our classes are always an hour long. So just because a workout's less than 3 minutes doesn't mean the class is shorter than 3 minutes. And just because the workout is 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or 40 minutes doesn't mean the class is an hour and a half, an hour and 40 minutes. But the things that you work on in class may differ from class session to class session. Now, why break up our programming like this? And I'll give you a little heads up on why. When I practice these things here in the middle, I get better at these things here in the middle. And when I practice these things here in the middle, I get a little bit better at the short things. And when I practice these things here in the middle, I get a little bit better at these long things. But in order to get the full adaptation out of these short things, every once in a while, I need to do some short things. And in order to get the full adaptation out of these long things, every once in a while, I need to do some long things. So in order to get this curve to rise on all ends of the area, I need to do some long things, some short things, and a bunch of things in the middle. So that's how we break up our training. The next thing that I want to talk about is our why, and it is the most important thing that I will talk about in this little video. This is the reason that we exist. It is more important than beating all of your friends. It is more important than lifting all the weight. It's more important than feeling better. It's more important than looking good. Those are all amazing side effects, but it's not the reason that we do what we do here. The last time that you went into the doctor, you likely got your height and your weight. Then they brought you into the doctor's office and they sat you down. The nurse came in, they put a blood pressure cuff on you, and maybe a pulse oximeter, and they got some vitals from you. Maybe they even took some blood and got a bunch of biometrics from you as well. Those are all baseline metrics that the doctor uses to say, hey, you're normal, you're normal, you're not normal, you're normal, you're not normal, you're normal, you're normal, you're normal, you're not normal, you're normal, you're not normal. We're going to look at a few of those numbers right now, some vitals. One of them would be 120/80, blood pressure, 72 on a resting heart rate, 18 to 22% body fat, 65 to 115 milliliters per deciliter on blood glucose, and we'll look at a bone density as well. Now there are tons of other numbers that you could look at, like A1C and HDL cholesterol and LDL cholesterol, total cholesterol, blood triglycerides, but these are the few that we will look at for right now. Now you can go two directions from this normal number. You can go left towards sickness, and you can go right towards fitness. And we're going to look at the left right now at the sickness side, and numbers like that on the sickness side look like this: 175/145 on a blood pressure, 100 beats per minute or more on a resting heart rate, 35% body fat or more, 200 milliliters per deciliter on blood glucose or more, and low bone densities. Now all of these things have some correlations or maybe even some associations. This is called hypertension. This is called tachycardic. This is called obesity or overweight. Typically this is referred to as diabetes, and this one here is called osteoporosis. These three here also are combined and contribute to coronary heart disease or congestive heart failure as well. All of these things over here on this side, on that sickness side, would be considered chronic illnesses. I've got good news about chronic illnesses. They are completely preventable and reversible with lifestyle, with eating well and exercising regularly. Now let's look at the other side of this graph. So if we go from that side all the way over to this side, numbers like this from normal to fit look like this: 105/70 on a blood pressure, 55 on a resting heart rate, 12 to 16% body fat, 65 to 95 on a resting blood glucose, milliliters per deciliter, and increased numbers in bone density. So I want to take you, and as you can see, these are in the opposite direction from those sickness numbers. I want to take you from as normal as possible, put you as far over on this side as we possibly can. And we do that with our CrossFit, our constantly varied functional movement performed at high intensities. That's how we get fit. Works great. But then I want you to stay there. And I want you to stay there for as long as you possibly can. And we do that with community, with surrounding yourself with other people who also think it's important to eat well and exercise regularly. That is the other half of what this space is. Yes, we do CrossFit. Yes, we do high intensity exercise. We do functional movements. But the other half of this space is a bunch of people who also think it's important to eat well and exercise regularly. I forget where the study comes from, but there is the power of association. There's a lot of nutritional studies that talk about, hey, if I'm overweight, what's the likelihood that my spouse is overweight? If I'm overweight, what's the likelihood that my child is overweight? And in spousal relationships or significant others, it's around 30%. And in a child to parent relationship, it's about 50%. So who you surround yourself makes a big difference in your life. You may hear of that with anything. Birds of a feather flock together, walks like a duck, talks like a, quacks like a duck, sounds like a duck, is a duck, type of thing. So I want to take you from this normal state that maybe you're in, or wherever you are may lay on this, and I want to take you as far over here as we possibly can. And I want you to stay over there because inevitably, life happens. You can't always eat like you want to. You can't always work out like you want to. Work gets stressful. Family stuff comes up. Relationships get hard. Maybe the world shuts down and you can't go to a gym. I don't know what it's going to be, but I know that inevitably life is going to throw you something that's a little bit rough to handle. And when that happens, not if, but when that happens, we start to slide on this continuum. And if I'm over here and I start sliding that direction and it's 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, and I go back to my doc and I'm like, Doc, it's been rough. I haven't been eating really well. I'm kind of stressed out at work. I'm not really sleeping. You know, I've got a little bit of worry about money, whatever it may be. And the doc's like, hey, you're going to be fine. Your numbers, they're normal. You're going to figure this out. You're going to get back into your life habits and you're going to be fine. This is going to be totally okay. You're going to figure it out. Cool. Thanks, doc. Appreciate it. But if I start out at normal and I start to slide this direction, and again, we don't know how long it's going to be. It could be 3 months, could be 6 months, could be a year, could be 2 years, could be 4 years, could be 5 years. We don't know. And I go back to my doc, and you're like, Doc, I'm getting a little bit older. It's not getting any easier to eat well. I'm not feeling any more motivated to work out. My work is more stressful than it was before. I got more family stuff now, more responsibilities. Maybe I've got kids, maybe I've got a wife. There's a lot of other things going on in life. You know, I'm not sleeping super well. And the doc's like, you know what? We need to have a conversation. We got to make some changes today. Not tomorrow, not next week, not next month, today. Or we got to start taking meds because we can't live with numbers like this. That conversation is not a conversation I want anyone to have with their doctor. The reason that we exist today is so that less of these conversations ever take place. I want you to get fit to create a hedge against sickness so that if you get fit, you have to get well before you can get sick. The reason that we exist is so that less of these conversations ever take place. And again, it's more important than looking good, than sleeping better, than having more energy throughout the day, than beating all your friends, than being able to go and do that trail run, that 5K race, that bike ride that you've always wanted to and never thought you could. Those are all amazing, amazing side effects, and you should enjoy those benefits, but it's not why we do this. Community is huge inside here. Because at some point, we all ask ourselves, why? CrossFit loses its newness, it loses its funness. You know, maybe there's times that you ask yourself, why the heck am I doing this? It's hard. It is hard, I'm not going to lie to you. Why am I doing this? And if you know why you're doing this, you keep on doing it. You stick on this side for as long as you possibly can. I want to be able and well-bodied for as long of my life as I possibly can. Awesome. If there's only one thing that you remember out of this entire talk, it is that. The last thing that we'll talk about really quickly is intensity. And the analogy that I'm going to give for an intensity for us is freeway driving. Most of us drive on the freeway on a regular basis. And most of us drive 75 miles an hour or faster. Now, is that dangerous? Absolutely, that is dangerous. If my car flipped over at 75 miles an hour, no good things are happening. I would be very lucky if nothing bad happened. Did I feel like I was in danger driving at 75 miles an hour? Nope, not at all. I felt very safe doing that. And this is why. Mechanics, consistency, and then and only then intensity. When I first learned how to drive, I started driving in a parking lot. Then I went into some side roads, then maybe some residential roads. Then maybe I added some stop signs, maybe some more traffic, maybe then some stop lights, added even more traffic then. And then I started merging on the freeway, merging off the freeway until where I am now today, where I feel very comfortable driving at 75 miles an hour on the freeway. This is the same for fitness. Intensity, like we talked about earlier, is the independent variable most commonly associated with favorable adaptations to training. Now, blah, 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 blah. All that means is that intensity is our freeway to fitness. It is the fastest way to get from unfit to fit. Now, if I didn't feel comfortable on the freeway, I could still get to where I was going. It would just take a little bit longer to get there. And the same thing is true for intensity. Intensity is not a necessary factor or variable for results in fitness. It is an amazing tool for results. It is not the only tool for results. I know it's the fastest way to get from unfit to fit, but if I don't yet feel comfortable using it, it is not worth using the intensity. So I want to make sure that you are solid in your mechanics first and consistent in your mechanics first before I ask you to go hard, heavy, or fast. That's why we do everybody who comes in here with one-on-one training before they step foot in group classes. I want to make sure that you have the 2 C's down. That is competent in your movement and confident in your movement. When you have those 2 things, competent and confidence, your experience using intensity will be way better. Your experience overall inside here will be way better. And a really cool thing about this is if I start with competence, it will feed into my confidence. And from there, my confidence will feed back into my competence. So it is a great tool for us. We love using intensity. It's that independent variable most commonly associated with favorable adaptations to training, but we have to make sure that we are prepared and ready for it. Cool. I'm so glad you listened to this. I'm excited for your journey with us here at Oxnard Movement, and I can't wait to meet you. Have a good one.